Storm have been building for quite some time.
Welcome to our show.
Hey, Annie Mac here.
And I'm Danji Castro, and we are
2POC2QUEERS. Welcome back. It's so good to see you. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's a little chilly outside, but it's spring or the end of winter and hope of spring.
We've been given enough to hold on to. So, but today it's it's rainy, it's a little bit dreary, so it's a good coffee shop day or hide under the covers.
Or to record an episode of 2POC2QUEERS. So here we are today.
I was going to say not in a fetal position. We save that for...
It's called seasonal depression.
Seasonal depression. Fetal position, seasonal depression. Yeah.
Well, today's show, we're going to talk about what it means to do the work. So we've mentioned the work a few times in the last few episodes, and Annie is a big fan of doing the work. So I'm going to have her kind of explain what it means to do the work.
So doing the work is taking a radical personal inventory of problematic behavior that is either stunting your growth as an individual or perhaps just doesn't serve you anymore, but it's really just taking a step back to look at yourself and realize what could I be working on, having some self-awareness to how you're showing up in relationships, possibly at your job, and most importantly, how you're showing up to yourselves. And so part of the work is just realizing and being self-aware of problematic behavior or just, habits that we get into that we don't know any better because we don't have the tools or the knowledge. And so I shouldn't even say problematic behavior, but just, unhealthy, possibly practices, behaviors that just no longer serve you.
Yeah. So. Right. Also, in addition to just some self-reflections and self-improvement, it's also doing the work of anti-racism and social justice and what that looks like for you and how you show up in doing that kind of advocacy, especially if you are a person who identifies as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. And all of the different ways and intersections when it comes to being from a group that's been historically marginalized. So for us, when we decided to get together, have these really deep, meaningful conversations, we wanted to create some safe spaces for BIPOC folks, for queer folks, for people with disabilities, people who want to talk about the deeper stuff when it comes to what it means to be discriminated against, to live in a system that has systematically oppressed us historically, and also what it looks like when in our daily lives, in our professional lives, and just like socially, how we interact with people and how we fall in love.
Okay. How we fall in love. That was good. So when you were saying that, I was thinking about how the work shows up differently in those different capacities. And one of the things that I personally have really challenged myself to lean into is radical truth. Even if it makes me uncomfortable, and even if it especially makes others uncomfortable when sharing this radical truth. And then also making sure to examine where is the foundation and where is it coming from that it is necessary to speak in a certain way or to drop truth or knowledge on individuals. And so I have been very truthful in the presence of white people. I would say in the past, the past maybe 3 to 4 years, there's just been a space of really not looking to make individuals comfortable and allow them to not have to do the work of actually being present in their bodies and being present intellectually. It's been an interesting, I feel like a lot of my interactions with white people or spaces of oppression, or just even like, you know, everyday normal life, is making sure of like having to second guess or think about everything. And it's not about how I feel, it's not about how I process, it's not about anything that I'm doing, but actually being concerned, like, will I be seen as to this? Am I difficult? Am I doing something wrong because I'm speaking up about some really messed up behavior and I'm looking for accountability? And that a lot of times when we question ourselves, it's just because we've been gaslit. You know, we've been told that, yeah, we are making too big of a deal, or that's not what the intention was, you don't understand, or, you know, all these things. So learning to be honest and actually sticking to that, and then not, and being unapologetic for sharing my truth or challenging things.
Well, you shared with me the other day a story about when you were at a local retailer shopping, and how you were just kind of minding your own business, waiting in line, and all of a sudden, you want to talk about the
Right.
situation?
So I was at one of my favorite places, and this is something that I've noticed a lot. I read an article about white women and the proximity, white women and the expectation of behavior from Black and brown people. There's a historical, a long history of problematic white women who, and I'm just specifically addressing this, who have caused a lot of harm, a lot of damage, a lot of things that have taken place because of white tears or what they've said, or just just, you know, the belief that something happened. Like, you know, white women are valued in our society.
Well, just like their sense of entitlement,
Sense
or
of
just
entitlement,
total lack
yeah,
of awareness,
lack of
lack of
awareness,
self-awareness, lack of awareness of like what is around them, who is around them.
So yeah, I was at the store and I was just, you know, looking at clothes and such, clothing store. And I noticed, like, I could feel, you know, when you can feel someone. I heard the cart, I could, you know, feel someone approaching, and I turned around and I saw this woman had basically pulled up, and she was like only 1 to 2 inches away from me. And I turned around and I just kind of looked, and I didn't move. I'm from, you know, I was taught to respect my elders. It was an older white woman. I taught to respect my elders, you know, do certain things, show respect. But it was the way that she did it that I knew she did not care about being in proximity to me. And she actually thought I should move out of the way, because here's what happened. I looked at her because I was there first, and I wasn't blocking, I wasn't taking up space like that. I was looking at clothes. And we looked at each other and I said, "Good afternoon." And she said, "Well, are you going to move?" And I said, "Are you going to use your words? Do you know how to use your words? Such as, excuse me, I'd like to get by, please." Anything like anything of that nature. And she said, "Well, you should just move." And I said, "No." I said, "Ma'am, you are so used to Black and brown people, or, you know, getting out of the way for you. You think that you are, right, entitled." And I didn't use those, but I said, "I'm not going to move. You should use your words." And I said, "You don't want to acknowledge me as a human being. That's the problem. You don't want to use your words, because then you have to acknowledge that this Black woman standing in front of you is indeed a person who does deserve respect." And I could tell she rather stand there, stare me down, be passive aggressive, make sounds, sigh, do all these things, versus giving me my respect as a human being because of the color of my skin. And I said that to her. I said, "You don't want to have to say, excuse me, because I'm a Black woman." I said, "I'm going to do your work for you. It's not my work, but what I'm going to say is, I'm going to excuse myself. I'm going to get out of the way. And then I encourage you to use your words and to use your manners when you want to get somewhere. Black, brown, whomever." And I said, "You have a good day and do better." And I said, "You are a racist. You are a racist. If you go into space," I said, "You are a racist. This is about you being a racist." And this has happened to me so many times, just walking down the sidewalk.
Well, the thing is that we discussed this about that people think that being a racist means that you're burning crosses in people's yards, and that's not what. That is an overt, obvious sign of racism. That's a hate crime. Racism is everywhere, like in policies and laws. in how workplace environments are, subtle microaggressions of, oh, where are you from? Or that's a really interesting, unique name. How do you pronounce that?
Or you speak nicely. You speak so nicely. Yeah,
You're
where are you
very
from?
eloquent or articulate. Those are the two. Articulate is always a good one that I get. And I'm like, I really don't think I'm that articulate. But probably because I'm brown, and it must be shocking for folks who encounter people of color who don't have a heavy accent and that actually can speak their mind without being all overly worried or concerned about what they're saying to people. I would have a different, like, on the other end of that situation, when I see people in aisles, white people particularly, and they're taking up space and I need to get through, instead of, basically going through and saying, excuse me, because I just always feel like that's just gonna be a thing. I just go around. I go around people. I go out of my way so I don't make other people uncomfortable.
And it's easier. It's easier.
It's oddly, yes, easier for me to go around or like decide I'm going to go get something else and then come back to this aisle. So I don't have to deal with this person who's basically like taking up this entire aisle, and there's plenty of room for two carts to pass by.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I am really self-aware and aware of my surroundings when I'm out shopping. And so I know where my cart is. And if I'm going to be like, I have to peruse something, I might put my cart in a different place so I'm not taking up space, or I'll make sure that my cart is against the aisle so people can go through. Like, I'm very aware because I don't want people to have an excuse to say shit to me.
Right.
Just to be like rude or mean, because those are things that I just don't need in my day.
Right. And I feel that in the store, I did turn around and I always give a window. I'm not looking to start shit. I'm not into, having issues or anything like that. However, I am grown. I'm a person that deserves respect. I give it. I'm very respectful of, like I said, my elders. I always want to be helpful in community when I'm out. If I see a mom and her kids like running away towards this, towards I'm going to step it, it's community. I believe in practicing community. However, with this woman, the fact that she was just so like, well, are you going to like I did something wrong, because once I realized she was there, I did get out of her way. I actually just I planted myself. And that has been something I've been really working to do. I'm very intentional about how I carry myself physically. When I walk into spaces, especially when there's a lot of white individuals, white men, I tend to carry myself with a certain, and I always think, is there going to be pushback, or are they intimidated when there's confident brown and black people walking around? And the answer is yes. I already know the answer. And it's amazing in that instant when you have confidence and white individuals take note, how quickly there is looking to do something to bring you back down, to actually like level you, like, oh, you're uppity, oh, you're going to walk in here, and and so that, I think, is really, really hard to have. It's always incredibly hard to have to go into a space and be afraid of being confident. Like, there might be pushback if I happen to walk in here like, yeah, I know, I'm a worthy person. I'm a person of color. I'm not afraid, And it's amazing, like, you can feel that individuals they're fearful of that. There's a fear there, of confidence and knowing who and being grounded.
Yeah, and then there was another incident that Annie Mack and I were at a restaurant eating, and she gave her card and also her driver's license to the server because she wanted to make sure that the server knew that the card was hers. And the fact that Annie feels the need to have to prove that she's not using fraudulent,
and it could be
cards.
my wife, it could be my, It's like things happen, but yeah, I was nervous, and I don't do it all the time. I don't do it all the time, but there was something about this circumstance where I'm just like, I did that, and I
Mhm.
don't do it all the time, you know. Um, but yeah, every so
I don't even
often
think
I'll
about
get
that.
every
Like,
so often I get a feeling like I just when you say like you just don't want any, it's like okay, I don't want any BS.
mhm,
You know, every once in a while I get a feeling, and I will do things a little bit more differently
mhm.
than normally, and that was one of those times.
I think that's the difference between you and I about me being Asian, you being a black woman. That there is a financial difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever am concerned about like people thinking that that I'm not using my own uh, bank card when
Mm-hmm.
I'm out eating. But if people don't know what my race or ethnicity is, and I'm out at night in the dark, um, I do kind of wonder if people will call the police or something like that, or if I'm in danger. But also when I because I present more on the mask side, I don't worry about being out late at night either. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't think about myself as a victim of sexual assault or anything like that. Like I could walk my dog at after 10 o'clock at night if I needed to and not really be concerned. But we don't have that for women, for femmes and female identified folks who fear, getting up early in the morning to go running if it's still dark out, or going running at night when it gets too dark out.
Right.
Um, and that idea that you can't go somewhere alone, like going for a run or going on a trail without worrying about like being attacked or taken or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know if men actually think like that. I don't think straight white men do.
No. Um.
They don't have to think about their safety in that way. And the fact that even like um, white het cis men would even be concerned about like black people, like of physical violence, to the point where they feel like they would need to shoot them if they're standing on their porch or parked in their driveway, or celebrating their friends who are running the Boston Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So there was currently a video clip that I watched on Instagram where this group of black folks were supporting their friends who are running in the Boston Marathon, and so there was a large number of them, because that's just how that community works, is that they're there, they show up and they support each other, and so there's probably a large group of them, you know and so what happens is, because of that, because there's a large group of them together, celebrating, supporting their friends, a group of police officers surround them.
Right. Right. Yeah, this is a common practice of when there's a congregation of Black people in particular. It is a threat.
Hmm.
It is considered unruly behavior. We are watched on a whole different level. There's a whole different type of energy that's associated with the treatment of Black people who congregate in public
Hmm.
spaces,
Yeah.
and the need to be checked.
Yeah.
That's just old slavery
Yeah.
supremacy
Yep.
shit that
It
is in the
is.
DNA of white folks. Like if you literally go out and you see a group of Black individuals and that bothers you, and not only does it bother you, but you feel the need to go and regain control or go and
Yeah.
have an
You have to
input
go
into the
check
situation,
on those black folks.
you just may be a racist. You just might, right.
Just living their lives, but happen to be black.
Mm-hmm.
That somehow it bothers you, and you have to come around
Right.
and disrupt whatever is happening, because you're worried they're like doing something terrible. Well, we have to remember that this is a situation that we have created as a society, that black individuals are seen as criminals, because that's where we as America has put them. that's where we place them. We have created situations and an environment where they are the disparity in wealth gap, the huge number of Black and brown folks who are incarcerated, the disparity in pay gap. So there's a lot that we as America have to confront when it comes to how we've treated descendants of slaves and the indigenous people who were here before all of us, and what we need to do moving forward to rectify some of the hurt and harm that we have done over hundreds and hundreds of years. California had recently they had a task force to figure out how much it would cost to give descendants of slaves reparations, and it would be about $300 billion.
Yeah.
And that's just for the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about giving reparations to the descendants of slaves in America, it would be, yes, trillions of dollars with all the unpaid labor, with compound interest on top of that,
right,
over hundreds of years, and the policies that made it impossible for them to own properties or own businesses, to have their own money, and then the things that white Americans did when Black people did create their own finance and their own economy, that white individuals would come and basically burn it all down. So today, the work is basically admitting Black people deserve to be treated way better than we've been treating them, or have treated them, or are currently treating them. And that the fact that, sure, whatever, we think that they're shoplifting, or we think that that's not their bank card, or that they're the idea of the welfare queen, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is propaganda from conservatives about saying that people are taking advantage of welfare, and that's just so much garbage, because that is people, those are elected people who don't want to pay people what they deserve, what they're worth. That we pay taxes to provide a social security network, right? So people who fall through the cracks can find a way to be able to be brought back into the fold, right? That's what we're supposed to do as a community for each other. We're supposed to be there for one another when some of us aren't able to find our way, right? And that is the Black community. That's where white people are supposed to step up for the Black community and create opportunities to make a way, because white people need to rectify the bullshit that they have done to the Black community for hundreds of years.
And it's the release of resources, and the embracing of autonomy and agency. So we're talking about releasing the resources, but not feeling the need to have to control or dictate or have the expectation that whatever happens has to be ran through this oppressive leadership or expectation, how things show up. And so it's yep, give us the resources and we know what we want to do as a Black community.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to be saved. We don't need you to step in. We need you to release these resources and not gatekeep and make us jump through hoops in order
Mm-hmm.
to get it. And so the problem is, every time we seem to get opportunity or we seem to get some recognition of what has taken place and transpired, it always comes along with, okay,
well,
stipulation, control,
well, then
roadblock,
white people
all
come
these
in
things.
and they're like, well, why are they getting all that stuff?
Right,
Why can't we
right.
get that stuff? You've been getting that stuff for hundreds of years. So
Right.
you need to just step off and just step back. And that's where we lose ground. And this has happened in DEI work when we are always talking about, like, we need to make sure that we're doing this for every marginalized community. Sure, that's great. However, we have to remember that historically in this country that we have lynched, we have created genocide for groups of people for generations, and nobody has paid for it.
Right.
And the fact that we say, well, I had nothing to do with that. Why should I have to pay for that? Well, why do Black people still have to pay for what happened to their ancestors? And they do. They still, the disparity in Black folks in who are incarcerated, the disparity in the wealth gap, the disparity in the pay gap. They consistently still have to pay for all the crime that has been bestowed on them, on their ancestors. So yes, moving forward, and Black people have to pay for that stuff. Yes, white people have to find a way to make it right.
And we're not even going to, start to begin to address the indigenous communities and people and what they have gone through just to even reclaim land and protect land that, was taken away, as well as their culture stripped away. And just the harm of like trying to erase a whole culture and eradicate a whole people.
The fact that
so Minnesota alone, is incredibly intense. But we have to stick to. We will get to that, but my heart does break, and it's incredibly devastating to see what is transpired and continues to be practiced, and all these things are created to keep oppressive communities oppressed, and not able to get to a space of equity and be able to and those communities who are able to get financial equity or who are able to take care of their own community are so harassed and so scrutinized to try to take away the wealth that has been worked really hard to have within the community, and so they are targeted. When you don't pose a problem, when you have been put in your place in the sense of you are living in severe poverty, you are dependent upon this, you need that, you are not able to, as a community, have agency over the community, there's nothing to worry about. You just maintain the oppression. When you are a community that starts to step into and get access to resources and build capital gain and build equity, and you're starting to be able to invest in the community, and you're getting stronger in that way, it is like you are always attacked and hunted down. And then there's things that are put in place to make it that much harder to get access. And nonprofit is one of the biggest gatekeepers of resources and opportunities, and being able to offer support and financial, help and resources to these impacted communities. And when I talk about the gatekeeping, it is having to fulfill a very specific set of expectations that are hard to accomplish for the average person of color because of things that have been put in place to make it really hard to accomplish certain things. And so it's devastating when I came across all these really amazing, badass nonprofits that are ran by amazing BIPOC leaders and people who are serving community, and then come to find out that they are not, they have to work with a fiscal sponsor or be under the umbrella of a very established space.
Yeah, larger organization.
Larger organization.
Supposedly it does work for the
and versus
diverse community.
Yeah, and versus teaching people how to jump through the hoops and being like, well, here's what you have to do. No, we address the established structure that's been put in place, and we challenge it and say, how are we helping the problem if we are making individuals having to jump through all these unrealistic hoops? And if you're not able to do it, then you don't have access to these resources.
Well, I always think it's really, interesting, the idea of like best practices, right? Nonprofits or even nonprofit funders.
And you can cut all of that out. I feel really bad.
Why?
I just do.
Why would you
Just cut that segment out.
Why?
Because you need your job for a little bit longer. You do.
The fact that you even have to say that says a lot.
It sucks. It's not okay.
It is not. It's not okay. And, it's
Sorry.
not okay. The fact that, so one of I have worked in nonprofits for a long time, and one of the things that nonprofits always say is that we are trying to work so we don't have to have jobs, right? Because we want to be able to solve the issue that we are trying to confront, whatever that need may be in the community, and eventually that we are working our way out of a job. And that is some BS. Because nonprofits thrive on need. Nonprofits, they pop up because, established nonprofits, let's just say. The smaller ones, like the demographic ones, that are run by, people from that community who are actually trying to solve a problem within their own community, is a little bit different than when you have a white-led organization that comes in telling Black and brown people how to live their lives. And that's really not how it works. You don't need to come and tell people how to live their lives. They know how to live their lives just fine. But it just happens to be a struggle, one, because there's lots of historical trauma, there's lots of systemic barriers, there is some issues when it comes within the communities of internal racism, intersectionality, of oppression. There's just a lot of different barriers that get in the way for BIPOC folks to be able to collectively be successful. So you have those few folks who rise to the cream of the crop, right? And we had talked about Black and brown excellence before. And instead of seeing whole communities as being excellent, it's always just like those single individuals who are like, the reason we find them to be excellent, white folks, can identify Black and brown folks as being excellent because their comparison is the fact that like all the other Black and brown folks are not excellent.
Right. You're the exception. And the bigger picture is about the creation of division and dissension amongst BIPOC communities and pitting communities against each other in order to try to get resources and support and help.
The fighting for limited resources.
The fighting for limited resources and being told that your value as a community, this is how your value shows up. That, this community is seen as more industrious and more dedicated and they give back quicker and they do all these things. Oh no, this community, they really haven't, so they don't do anything. They've proven that they're this, and this, and they don't contribute in this way. And so the resources and everything, they go to these other spaces. And then groups, impacted communities who are like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why do we have to, compete? Why do we have to justify? Why do we have to prove our worth? So this is created, on purpose.
For sure.
Yeah.
So when we're
that's one of the healings.
When we're busy fighting over cookie crumbs, you have the other bigger, badder folks coming in just taking the entire cookie.
Absorbing all the resources.
Taking all the resources and just like making us fight over a little piece of it. And that is depressing and really infuriating.
And that's the healing, right? That's a whole.
Is it the healing?
The healing. That's the work.
Are we healing?
That's the work. When we talk about, and we're kind of getting all over the place, but
back to the work.
To the work. The work is getting hip to the propaganda and getting hip to the truth of what's happening. And not falling into this space of believing the narrative that is being,
sold to us.
And once we get hip to that, and a lot of communities get it, and it's been really beautiful to see. However, in some communities, that's something that we're still working toward. We're still trying to strive. How can we all get together to have solidarity and support each other and respect our differences, respect our intentions, and yet collectively be able to stand up against this oppressive structure and hold accountable,
Mhm.
call it out, and understand that we are able to put aside all of these things in order to accomplish what's important for the community.
Yeah.
Because when we all win, and we need to win, and so calling it out is really important.
Right.
And that even means going through. If we're talking about nonprofits, it's okay. Where did your money go? Where did your money go this year? Like, where did your money go? You cannot show this.
Why?
Oh my God. You cannot. We're going to have to record.
Is this because of
We got to record.
a certain nonprofit that you used to work at? Is that
Fuck.
are you getting, there's some flash, it is okay. It is okay to like talk
It's just
about
the
that.
accountability, and not like these like
or lack of accountability.
It's like yes, we want to know, and not just about the numbers of your final financial report.
It's okay for you to be angry about something that happened to you.
I'm angry about something that happened to me, something that impacted community. I'm angry that the things that took place did not put community first, nor show care or anything of that nature. So I am very upset about that. I'm actually very sad. It's very devastating. But
it would have been fine if the person responsible for it actually took accountability instead of basically put it on whatever they had decided to put it on, whatever excuse that they used. On top of like making the people of color that worked for that organization feel crazy when they were there,
Yeah, and not even realizing actually the depth of what was transpiring was pretty interesting.
And this is an organization that was specifically to support, help, advocate for communities, marginalized and diverse communities.
Yeah, and to witness it firsthand, to see who was considered more important, who was considered a better bet of investment, who was considered to be a performative reflection of the place, was really interesting. And also the co-opting that took place. Realizing that a lot of communities have done their own work, and they have put blood, sweat, and tears, money, everything, their lives to build community, and then have that co-opted by individuals who want to do the work by proxy, and so
a lot of these demographic organizations,
very interesting.
A lot of BIPOC run organizations are started from grassroots, from people's own money, investing their own hard-earned money into creating an organization to address whatever need or issue that is happening or arose in their community, and then gets to a point where they are able to apply for a grant, get money, and hoping to get more money to be able to do the work, and not having to put themselves in financial trouble, to continue to give back to their own community. And then what happens is that these individuals are taken advantage of by the same people they thought was there to support them, to advocate for them, to help them find resources, to help them use the resources, fiscally responsible with those resources, and efficacy.
So the thing that I find really interesting, and that was a nice word, like I felt it in my soul. Yes. The thing that I find interesting is, we get so caught up on the numbers. Okay, we need to see the final report. We need to make sure, and that's great, like responsibility, accountability, making sure the money is getting to where it's supposed to. However, also challenging spaces to be intentional and to stand on the intentionality and not buy into the rhetoric of it's for everybody. Everybody has to be included. And no, there are groups that are so historically impacted that they have not been able to even begin to step into the space of equity, financial equity, anything of that nature. And so you have to go to certain spaces and with intention, understanding that there should be more than enough for everybody, but just saying that we care. We are taking responsibility and realize that you have been impacted in this way generation. And, we want to be a part of that.
But I want to go back.
Healing.
So in that line of thought, I want to go back to the idea of work. So what happened is that there were folks in power, the gatekeepers, who were given evidence that things were not up, didn't seem to be up and up by several folks. And either they needed time to do some investigation, or they just felt that, whatever was happening, whoever the person in charge, like they could explain it away, or make excuses and saying, that they're just unhappy, right? These workers are just unhappy and dissatisfied, or they're not getting paid, and whatever excuse that they can come up to somehow tell the overseeing body that there's nothing to worry about. It's all good, right? That's where you folks, white folks especially, you have to come in and step in and look past your own bias of however you feel about people of color, about historically marginalized folks, is that see the evidence and see the facts for what they are, and to make a judgment based on a feeling of this doesn't seem right. And whatever this person is saying, even though that we trust this person because they're a white person, it just doesn't feel like it makes sense or it looks right. But there is also that feeling, and what I got is that these folks didn't want to take accountability for their oversight or lack of oversight.
Being complicit.
And so what I got from this whole situation is that folks who are kind of like maybe on the periphery feel that like they don't have to take responsibility for it because they too fear backlash or losing their job or losing their reputation, whatever it may be. And that's what people do. People will throw you under the bus, to save their own reputation. And what would make the world a better place is actually people taking accountability for their mistakes, for actually saying, you know what, oops, I messed up there.
Right. Oops.
What can we do moving forward? How can we make this better? It wasn't until it just felt like there was just too much evidence that we couldn't deny that something was not right, that eventually another group had to come in and clean it all up. And so that group, who was a little removed, but still kind of part of the situation, was able to look at it and say, you know what, we have to find a way to heal some of the harm. We're not going to be able to heal all of the harm, but at least we can try to, moving forward, not create more harm from whatever has happened in the past few years from this organization's mismanagement of funds, mismanagement of labor, of intellectual property, whatever it may be. So that's where I finally came to a realization of when it comes to doing good, organizations that do good in the community, is that sometimes I think they don't know who they're doing good for. Because at the end of the day, I think sometimes they just do good for themselves, and think that they're doing good for the community that they're supposed to be serving. But at the end of the day, if you actually go into those communities, it's not any different. And if you look at the news, sometimes it feels even worse. When it comes to the fear that has happened, the division between people, the fear that white people have for brown people, or the fear that people have of each other, just in general.
Right. And the work, really looks like, realizing, understanding the depth of how white supremacy shows up
In everything.
In everything.
In everything.
And in individuals. It starts with individuals. It starts with individuals who are in spaces of authority and direct impact, or direct connection and relationship to impacted communities, who are not doing their own personal work of anti-racism, and yet they are subjected to some really, our educators, our people in the medical field. We just assume that because you hold a title that you're going to be a representation of a good human. Or a good human that's self-aware and realize when you're problematic on a racial level, and so we just give all kinds of assumptions and benefit of the doubt that people are of course, I'm not burning a cross in a yard.
I had a certain situation that happened to me recently when it came to my dental care.
And it's disturbing.
And
it's disturbing
I trusted
the faith that we give to people.
I trusted the experts, the professionals, to make the best discerning choice based on my care. And I think that's what saddens me nowadays, is that we are so focused on money. We are so focused on paying our bills and making sure that our financial worth continues to precede us, that we have lost our way when it comes to taking care of other human beings. And I was livid based on the fact that I'm just sitting there, as a patient, putting my trust and faith in the professionals that they were going to take the best care of me, and what happened was not what happened.
Right. It was actually somewhat predatory behavior to be given a service that you didn't need, that ended up costing way more than the actual, service that you needed.
And
then having to go back and still get the final service done.
And the thing is, and this is the thing when it comes to people, and we don't have a lot of money, all right? When you think about people who historically, I'm an immigrant. I don't have generational wealth. My family came here with whatever they came here with. And so whatever wealth that we created, we created that within our generation. And so whatever money I make, whatever money I have in my savings or 401k, some people don't even have 401ks, especially if you're in the service industry your whole life, or a migrant worker, or whatever, in low wage jobs without medical benefits. And then something happens where you have an emergency that costs a lot of money that comes out of your pocket. That's, even though you need to get it done because you're going to be, it's your well-being, it's your health, and just the way that people treat other people's money. Like, I don't have a lot of money. It just can come out of my pocket, for unneeded treatment. And that's just what makes me so angry, is like, this is how people get into debt. This is how people lose their homes. This is how people bankrupt themselves through medical debt, because they're getting care that they probably didn't need, or being charged more than they should be getting charged for a service that probably could have been done at lower, or try to figure out a way to work with their medical insurance, whatever it may be. Because I've fallen
who don't have, pay more. Like, you have to put a deposit down for this service. You have to have so much on your credit or debit card. You have to, just the vetting, the process of vetting as a Black and brown person is insane. It's like,
money really solves a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
When you don't have any money, you have to decide if you're going to pay rent, if you're going to feed your children, are you going to pay your gas bill, your electric bill? Are you going to be able to fix your car if it breaks down? just the idea, and that's like maybe like $500. $500 can make a huge difference in somebody's like life and how they pay a bill. If like something unexpected emergency comes up, that $500 has to come out of the pocket. Where is that going to come from? From their rent, from being able to eat, putting themselves in debt, not being able to pay a car note. It's just infuriating and frustrating because the way that white people talk about Black and brown people, that we don't work hard, it just is insane. I work full time. And on top of the other things that I do.
Absolutely.
The thing is, like, everyone's like, well, you should find another job. You should find a job that makes you pay more money, and maybe you can get a second job. It's like, do you even hear yourself?
Yeah.
Because I went to college to get a certain job. Unfortunately, that job doesn't pay a lot. Like teaching doesn't pay very much. But we need teachers. We have a teacher shortage. But, we don't pay them enough for them to be able to live. Service industry. People complain about a labor shortage. But we don't pay them enough to be able to pay their rent. To pay their rent in the city that they work in.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what craziness is people are talking about, like, go get an education. I have an education.
Yeah, you have a damn good education.
Really good. And do I want to make more money? Sure, of course I want to make more money. But the thing is, I want to do good in the world too. Right. And unfortunately, doing good doesn't get paid very much.
Unless you learn how to be really performative, you can get paid doing good. If you make it look good and people want to be associated.
Well, no, if I'm middle management.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care about your actual personal integrity or practice or how you're showing up,
or basically that I have freaking trauma that I've been dealing with. On top of that, I have to show up and be freaking excellent all the time. It's just like ridiculous. Oh, for like whatever bits of peanuts I get paid.
Right. I know. It's just like, it's a lot. It's so much. It's all so much.
So the work, I have followed the prescribed roadmap of success that white people have put down for us in the world. As an immigrant person, and enculturating myself, basically, doing all the right things. It is exhausting. I have done well for myself, but at some point there was a time. Well, the pandemic happened. My mom died. I broke up from a significant relationship and basically had a mental health breakdown. But I didn't have the luxury to be able to have that meltdown. I couldn't even do it on social media. They wouldn't even let me do that.
No, just a proper meltdown.
I had friends that said, "You're better than that, Banshee."
That whole bullshit of denying your feelings and your authentic feeling because you're better than that, when it's a righteous anger, when it's a righteous, it's okay, like you deserve to be able to lean into when bullshit happens to you and to be able to call it out and feel all the things. And so when people say that, it is such a disservice and it's such a manipulative thing to teach a person how to not acknowledge their own emotions, to learn how to stuff it. It's so emotionally unhealthy and toxic, actually, because it's just old behavior that we were taught. Don't say anything. Don't be mean. Don't be seen a certain way. You don't want to be judged. You don't want all these other things. So just betray yourself. Betray yourself intellectually, betray yourself spiritually, and then be a well-adjusted adult.
Well, these are good, well-intentioned liberal white folks who are saying this to me because they know how I will be viewed by other people, because as a brown queer person, they worry. There's nothing wrong with what they were doing. They were just worried about my reputation, worried about how people would view me as somebody who's a public figure who ran for office. Like, I can't have that out there. I can't have a mental health breakdown in public.
But Vanjie, those are my favorite favorite. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. But those are my favorite movies. I love black and brown films where they are normal and they do shit that we watch white people in movies do, like normal shit. And I remember when I watched certain movies, and of course I can't think of one, but I think that stood out to me. I'm like, oh, they did something that normally is not accepted or expected, and yet they didn't suffer as a result of it.
Well,
they were normal.
But we have.
But it's like, what did that well, is the goal is to live authentically.
That's a movie.
The goal is to live authentically.
It doesn't seem like we can do that in real life.
But the goal is to live authentically and to do the work of expecting that I deserve and I am going to be treated a certain way, and not have to live under the weight of the burden of oppression or being so controlled or hemmed up or paralyzed that like being authentic feels wrong. Well, like when we're authentic, when we start to really get authentic with ourselves, it doesn't feel natural at first. You have to deprogram and learn a whole different behavior and understanding. And so once the authenticity shows up, like full time, because I believe that we, when we're around our community or when we feel safe, absolutely we're more transparent and can get into certain things. However, that's not,
we'll be more honest. We'll be more
honest.
But like my in comparison to the rage of the white male. Oh. The fact that there is so much space that is given to white man rage, to the point where gun violence seems to be a norm, an accepted norm for white men to become angry and violent to the point of shooting people, and it seems to be something that happens daily. And then looking back on black and brown people and thinking about how violent we are. And we are just like, we're just trying to live. We're just trying to survive out here. And the fact that I cannot have real authentic feelings in real time, in the real world, because people are worried about my own anger, that somehow that's going to make other people uncomfortable. And I have been around angry white men that have made me frightened. Absolutely. To the point of my own safety. But I can't stop living my life because I'm worried about some white dude coming for me, right? So the work that we all need to do is just to be more aware of what's happening around us and why it's happening. Like it didn't just happen overnight. This is something that has been systematically put into place for us to be in this current time, that we are currently at a civil war amongst each other. Yeah. When it comes, we are divided as a country. Right. And remember, civil war, it's not like something that just happens overnight. This is something that it happens over many, many years. Any kind of revolutions, any kind of wars, it's not going to look like what you think it's going to look like. No. But we are at war. Absolutely. We are having a culture war currently. Absolutely. And the thing about it is it's about being organized. And what white supremacists have is organization. And then when people see that backlash, who's going to challenge it? Yeah. Who's going to challenge that backlash? When the fit is thrown by white America, when the message is sent, if you dare try to have freedom, autonomy, liberation, any of those things, I'm going to come back twice as hard. I'm going to come and get you, and I'm going to take you out. So I'm going to send a message, right? Like I'm going to control the culture and community. And when you have a community, let me tell you something about how this works. When you have a community who do not know how to show up in space and solidarity and take up space and ask and hold and demand for accountability and liberation, when that doesn't happen, guess who comes in? Guess who comes in? Organized, ready to go, educating, assembling their forces, meeting, having coded language, coded events, things of that nature. Guess who gets to come in because they're organized and they have their shit together? Guess who's coming in? Guess how the war is happening?
And so we're being, you're being subjected to all this shit. And you're like, oh, that's just, and then you're not even prepared. You're not even prepared. And so the work is speaking radical truth. The work is calling out leadership. People who say that they are anti-racist and DEI and all this other shit. Well, are you ready to provide asylum? Let's talk about this. Are you ready to take to the streets? Just like those hate groups that have no problem showing up 200, 300, 400 deep, because they understand the power of presence, physical presence.
With their tiki torches.
Are you ready?
And their polo shirts.
Are you ready to take up space? Are you ready to go? And they say boots to the ground. And I want to respect that term because it is boots to the ground. And it's understanding organization and getting together and being able to say, we're tired of being fed the narrative. We know it's bullshit. Here's what this looks like. So that when we all come together in communities, the same communities that are pitted against each other, the same communities that are told, you're better, you're not this, you can't get access to this.
Well, I'm just tired.
And then we're just tired.
We're just tired. We're just tired of
Civil War.
We're tired of calling people out and letting you all know. Like, everybody acts so freaking surprised when your rights are taken away, your autonomy is taken away, when your services are no longer funded. Like, everybody acts so freaking surprised. And it's like, dude, it's happening. It's systematically happening. Certain people are coming into power, into leadership roles, the deciders about budgets, about laws, about policies,
about freedom of speech.
They're coming for you.
Tells you everything you need to
know. And it's not just brown people anymore.
No.
They're coming for all of you.
Yep.
We just happen to be the front line, unfortunately. But then if we're taken out, you got no place else to go. Nobody's out there. Nobody's going to help you.
We have got to assemble. We've got to get together. And once again, the work is really deciphering how you're showing up in community. If you are a white person identifying and you are not doing anti-racist work, you will not understand how to assimilate and to get together to prepare for the Civil War. You won't know what to do because you can't believe. You won't know what to do because you don't recognize and you can't relate, and you will continue to be compartmentalized. You will not acknowledge, and you will be one of the people that will be right in the middle of it, and you will not know what you're doing and what to do and how to show up.
Stop acting surprised.
Stop acting surprised.
And wringing your hands and like,
I don't
know what to do.
You know what is going on.
Get freaking angry and do something. Write a nasty Karen letter. It's like, that's all you got in you.
And this man that shot this baby, he had been waiting. I watched his grandson on the news today talk about who his grandfather is and what he watches and the media that he takes in and how it had ramped up. He said, he was always kind of borderline but in the past 5 to 6 years, how it ramped up and what he was taking in and what he was feeding himself daily. Mm-hmm. That by the time it presented himself, he probably thought it was an act of God that someone was brought to that a Black person was brought to his door.
Well, he just thought that he was doing his patriotic duty,
Christian duty. And so that's a whole nother discussion for another time of like, what does it look like to really be, and I don't even know if I want to use ally, but like I always think about co-conspirator, and I always, think about asylum. I always think about, are people prepared to provide safe spaces? Because it is life and death. Are you prepared for the backlash of when we are looking to hold white supremacist spaces accountable, and when we are giving radical truth about different parts of the community that are in alignment with white supremacy and getting away with it, about the silence and neutral spaces of established businesses and entities in this city that have not chosen their side visibly, like they think that they can be neutral in the name of money or in the name of resources or whatever.
Promoted so many white businesses,
and so
and I have
people ain't ready.
So many white people
ain't ready. They're not ready. Oh, absolutely. They're not that bad. The worst way to defend a person is when you make excuses for them and try to downplay the reckless behavior and nature of problematic white people. That's the worst.
I mean, I've done that with like my exes. Well, she's not that bad.
Right. Well, she only cries when she's really sad. And I guess me having free thought and being liberated is sad.
Well, like, oh well, I didn't have the right to be so upset and angry about that.
Yeah. It could be worse. It could be worse.
Could have been worse. Yeah. It
could be worse.
They could have set my stuff on fire. At least they didn't do that.
Right.
Right? Exactly.
They didn't run me over with
I should be so happy that they didn't like burn my stuff in my front yard. Right? Oh, at least it's not that. You know, you black and brown people, you should just be happy with what you get. Right. Is that really how you feel? I really hope you don't. I really hope.
And I love when people are like, "Oh, I know it was bad." Like, and it's like, no, you don't. You have no understanding of the depth, the devastation of what white supremacy looks like and how it shows up. And it's like, if you have not, like, sometimes it's like, do white people really allow themselves to sit in the uncomfortable feeling and emotion of what racism is, their part in it, deep bias, how it's shown up in their everyday life, at the store or watching television, and help you if you work with community, help you like God has helped you if you work with community and you think that you're one of the good guys. You think you're one of the good people because I'm showing up, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And yet you're exhibiting behavior that you're not even conscious of because it's so embedded in you and so harmful. And so like, it is frustrating of the whole, like, I'm not that bad. I read.
I'm not those white people.
Yeah, I'm not those white people. Like, I read Michelle Obama's book, and I watch Oprah.
The white supremacy shows up in a lot of different ways, and I think what people don't understand is that it doesn't have to be this overt type of racism of people saying the N-word or discriminating in such a way that is so obvious. That's not how it works. Like it's that feeling that Annie and I get when we're having encounters with white folks, and that there's this really bad feeling in the pit of our stomach, like this does not feel right. Yeah. Because we have lived this. This is our experience. We're aware of these things that happen in our lives. One, as an educator, two, who has been doing DEI work for a long time. So I'm always very aware and cognizant of what's going on in my environment. And then I'm also a very self-aware person. I'm in real time processing what is happening to me all the time. Like, what people don't understand. Sometimes I look like kind of a dumb jock and that I'm not paying attention. But what I'm doing actually is I'm taking in information, I'm taking in my environment, and I'm trying to figure out, like, is this a safe space or not? And even if it's not a safe space for me, I evaluate if I'm able to take up space and feel that I will be okay in this space, because sometimes I need to take up space.
Absolutely. And being challenged if you're actually reading a situation correctly is probably one of the worst things that we can hear as individuals when we are experiencing active racism, bias, when we know what's happening, when we're experiencing white supremacy, overt, covert microaggressions, all that is always being questioned and challenged if we're sure of our experience or perception of what transpired. That is incredibly frustrating. And well-meaning people who love us, care about us, are sometimes some of the worst culprits of, well, are you sure you're not just being sensitive, or you might just be reading into things a little bit? And guess what? Yeah, it happens. When you live a life of every once in a while, it actually happens. Like, you're right. I was paranoid because we live in such a space, but I also have good discernment. We have good discernment. If we associate behavior and energy with something, there's usually reasons there. We've been given that discernment. We've been given that understanding of what's unspoken. I think it's incredibly harmful when a person's like, well, how did you know that? Did they say that? No one ever says that they're a harmful individual. No one ever says, but the ones who
I
do,
am actively going to be racist towards
right.
you.
And the ones who do, at least you know where you stand. Like, okay, I can deal with that. So it is interesting, that whole idea of, if I didn't say it, then it's not true. And then therefore, and everybody knows that's bullshit, because no one ever really says what they mean. And why we have to watch the cues. We listen to the tone. I met a gentleman earlier this week. I tell you what, it was a week where I'm pretty certain that he was a Proud Boy or a white supremacist. Probably. And it was in his verbiage. It was our conversation, the things he chose to focus on. All within the first 2 minutes of us talking, he talked about cultural appropriation, not in a positive way. He was wearing a certain garb, a certain. I don't even know to use the proper term. That from a culture.
Dashiki?
No. He was wearing like a kilt.
Oh,
and so he was very proud. I said, "Oh, that's Scottish culture." He was very proud, and then he said, "Well, I'm not really Scottish, but I'm cultural appropriation." And then just saying things like, you dress for the job that you want, right? You dress the way you want to be treated. And I know the rhetoric of, in that same instance, it's, oh, you wear your pants pulled down that low, or you wear that baseball hat, which is usually associated with a demographic, a community, right? And so it's interesting what a person reveals to you when they're not outright saying, but they're saying everything. I knew in that instant, I said, oh, okay, this guy is one of those. And the way he looked, and he has some tattoos, and he's very articulate. He was very, helpful, but there was an underlying sense of edge, an underlying sense of like biding one's time. Mm-hmm. The white supremacists, the people who are experienced, the leaders, the ones who understand the power of organizing, a call went out once again to a call went out to, that's power, to go to the White House. and it was not in a flyer. It was organized members of white supremacist groups that were able to answer this call and go, what took place on January 6th. And we have got to get on that level. We have got to get on the level of understanding that we are in a civil war, and how we show up as community and get organized and get intentional about who we're working with, understanding with what side they're on,
Not in a way that we're going to be throwing Molotov cocktails or anything like that, but mostly how we show up for each other as a community, because we are under attack.
Yeah. And if I can't trust you.
Yeah, we need to be safe spaces for each other. And I think that we need to be able to look towards each other, BIPOC folks, and trust that we will have each other's backs, and that the way that white supremacy works and wins is that they convince us that we are each other's enemies, and we are not, and we shouldn't be.
Absolutely not.
So my existence and your existence is resistance. And the fact that we just show up as our real authentic selves, that says a lot. And that in itself makes a difference. And the fact that we continue to do this podcast and educate and share our thoughts and experiences. And this isn't for the white community, this is for BIPOC folks, BIPOC queer folks who feel unheard and unseen, that we are here and we see you and we will show up for you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Annie Matt.
And I'm Benj Castro, and we are
2POC2QUEERS. Have a good night.
Good night.
Felt it in my spirit, and I saw the signs. I held my breath as I watched her hold on.